Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Empowerment. This is our episode number 20. Oh my God, I can't even remember the number. I think it's 21. 21.
Wow.
And that's great. We do one a month, so you know what that means. This is the 21st month. We're in our second year, and we're just having a great blast here. For the last couple of weeks, you may recall, I had Sarah Jane and Christy Borst on as guest hosts while Nancy was away on vacation. But I'm so glad, Nancy, you're back, and I'm thrilled to have you back again. You look refreshed and vibrant and all alive and everything. So say hello.
Hello, it's so good to be back. Yes, I was out for a while, kind of the topic of our show today, out together with my husband and met by our adult sons later in Arizona, traveling up through Utah, Nevada, and then Oregon, where we spent the remainder of our summer. It was awesome out there. It was at times really hot because they were in a massive drought. And there was a lot of forest fires, which is a bummer. So we took the good, a lot of beautiful scenery and things to enjoy, lots of good family, and learned and grew as we went. So I'm happy to be back in the swing of things, doing our show again. It's always nice to leave and do so and then come back, whatever that needs to be.
Yeah, sure. You said you went from Arizona to Utah?
Yeah, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, Oregon. We
Nevada, Oregon. Okay. So you kind of went by Boise, kind of south underneath it.
We're actually going to be in Idaho, but the smoke on our map, it looked really bad. And we were outdoors camping with a lot of smoke. Because unfortunately, I'm sure parts of Idaho got hit by fires as well, or they had smoke in them. So that's the only reason we avoided your state.
Yeah, well, it has been very hot here for sure. I think it's generally pretty warm in the summertime anyway, but it seemed to be unseasonably hot even here. And with the smoke that was coming in from the west, it made it a little bit unpleasant at times, I have to say.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm glad you're back. While I really enjoy Sarah and Christy, and it's really good to have them as participants, I really enjoy the way you and I flow together. I think it's a really nice synergy that seems to work well, and so I'm really grateful that you're back.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here with you. I always learn so much from you, and
thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So we picked this topic, the extended family visit. And I like that we've got a double play on that word extended. We have both extended visit and extended family. And maybe your extended visits involve both of those elements. Maybe it's just one, like an extended visit with your family, or maybe it's an extended or a short visit with an extended family. Who knows? But anyway, it's what we were talking about in preparing for this episode is that how often do we end up in a family situation, where we haven't been connected with some of the people in our family for maybe even years, and we get back into some kind of a reconnection, that perhaps it's a family reunion of some kind, perhaps someone's getting married, perhaps, heaven forbid, somebody has died and people are going to a funeral. Whatever the case may be, how often do we end up in those situations and we say, damn, I wish I wasn't here, and so that's really what we're here to talk about, is how we can continue doing our own personal growth work, even if our family members aren't doing the same kind of work, and be open and receptive and loving and compassionate with them, even though they may revert back to some of our old patterns and our old behaviors. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. And I know, Nancy, you said you were visiting family. So a part of this topic came about because of some of the interactions that you had to endure. Do you want to share a little bit about that and your story on that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. We were, like I said, we were there for both an extended visit with family. So it was a longer than normal visit. And what I learned was, when you are in somebody else's space that's not yours, you are a guest, but also family. And so there's just different energy that runs with that. And then staying longer after a while, the energy of the people that your family that you're visiting with yours doesn't always mix well. So energy currents come up and through that get your attention. It can be felt in the form of maybe at times for no reason feeling angry or defensive, unheard, as well as feeling cared for and nurtured. So I really, on this trip particularly, because we were there longer, I really noticed a mix and an interplay of a gamut of emotions with my sister, probably with more women than men. Just because I guess that's my gender, but with my sister, mom, mother-in-law, and some of my sister-in-laws. So there was just this interplay where you're in for a visit, trying to get into their space or share or whatever, and then just I really sense a lot of I take in a lot of other people's energy. So maybe it was theirs, but I really was open my eyes to, okay, what am I meant to learn on this trip? Why do I have these feelings when we're, quote, loving family? Yes, we have a history. What is all this coming from? And it really did impact me. I felt the energy of this visit, and it got my attention into what it was I needed to learn and what it was needed to heal from. And what we're talking about today is how to let it all be, being compassionate to my needs while knowing that the other person, the family member, it matters just as much to them to be cared for and connected. So kind of played a whole range of emotions and life lessons that came up.
Yeah, that's pretty, I would say that's pretty detailed and also pretty intense, I can imagine.
Yes.
I can certainly resonate with some of what you're talking about. There's a funny thing about family dynamics. It doesn't seem to matter how old I get. If I end up in a family situation, it's almost like I revert back to those days when I was a teenager or a young adult or something, or even a little kid, especially, well, my mom and my dad are both passed now, so it's not happening anymore. But until they passed, I noticed that anytime I was interacting with them, my mom could just look at me in a certain way, even though I'm a full-grown adult, and I could suddenly feel like that infantile 3-year-old boy or 4-year-old boy who was getting scolded. It's interesting how those little, those as you call them, energy movements happen. Mm-hmm. I like to call them triggers. I mean, that's really what it is. It's some kind of a trigger.
Yeah,
that brings up, old energy. And in fact, while you were away, one of the episodes we did was triggers into, I can't remember the title of it right off the top of my head, but it was an episode where we talked specifically about triggers. And what better place to have your triggers manipulated than in a family dynamic?
Yeah,
one of the things that our siblings tend to do, whether we like it or not, is they just seem to have a great knack for bringing up all the history and reminding you of all the horrible things you did when you were however many years old. Have you had that experience?
Yes. What a similar one was when my sister and I, particularly because I just have one sister, when we were, engaged in a conversation, she triggered me into maybe a well-worn habit pattern of being the younger sister, of her, quote, wanting to out-sister me or know more. And I really had a reaction to
I've never heard that phrase before. I like that.
Yeah. So I ran that emotion, and I believe, unfortunately, a little bit with my mom. I know it was from the best, but it was just well-worn habit pattern of her seeing me not as a mature woman, but, oh, you're back again. You're that 5-year-old that I'm mother. I'm like, at one point, I'm like, you do not even need to go there anymore. We're way past that. Let's find something else to talk about. And it wasn't.
Good for you. I think we need to find something else. I like that. It's very good.
It was something that we've been around the bend before, and I think that's what happens on sometimes with a short visit, you don't have time to really get into it, or you're able to keep things more in check because maybe I'm just here for 3 days or a weekend. But on the long visit, something is going to give after a while. I mean, you can just keep the lid on so much, and so maybe this long visit brought all this up to the surface, to say, okay, now what are you going to do with this? Yeah.
Well, exactly. Yeah. This whole idea of mom or dad saying, wow, there's that little 5-year-old again. That can be very triggering in itself.
Yeah.
That kind of remark that, I don't know, I think in a way, it may be coming from a place of, fond memory.
Yeah.
Often it seems to me that it's usually coming from a place of, they want to push your buttons. They want to see how you react. They want to, find out, have you really done all this work that you claim to do, and that sort of thing. There is a little bit of that ego play going on in those kinds of scenarios. And like I said, when we're in a non-family relationship and we have those kinds of triggers happening, I think we're a little bit better equipped to deal with how to manage our emotions and whatever else is going on. And so we can recognize, oh, this is that trigger that my mom used to do. But when you're back in the family relationship and mom actually does it, it's a little bit harder to, stay grounded and centered. That's one of the things that I've noticed about this.
Yeah, when I see your comment, Denise. Yep.
Yeah. Oh my God, I could talk for years. I mean, years of this and how unfairly treated I am year after year after year. Exactly. It's not a pleasant situation. And I'm sorry to hear that you are getting unfairly treated, Denise. I guess I can't prescribe a particular course of action to prevent that kind of treatment. But one of the things that Nancy just mentioned was, okay, thank you. We don't need to go there. Let's find something else to talk about. That might be a way that you can try to diffuse the situation before it gets out of hand. Something along that line.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of something else that occurred while I was in a triple mix with my sister and my mom. So we have this little triangle because it's just the three of us, and an old well-worn habit pattern, again, because I was there so long, came out to play. And it sat me in what I realized then was old energy. And I knew it and I didn't like it. And my loving sister, after she and I had an unpleasant exchange, but it was diffused and I left feeling great. I didn't think anything of it, didn't say anything. But for her, she took her strength and power and told our mom. And mom, being in her old well-worn habit pattern, thought that she had to then, when we talked, share with me what my sister told her. So it's this weird triangle.
Oh, yeah.
I heard from your sister that blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Okay. Well, I said, and then I kind of began to get there and I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm in the middle of whatever, mom's energy, my sister's energy, and it really is not mine. So now I know when that energy triangle comes, and maybe this is you.
I'm sorry, what's that phrase you're using? Energy what?
Energy triangle or energy mix between
right.
two people.
Mm-hmm.
So my energy got caught in between theirs. And really, there was nothing that I could do or say. So that's when I started to get angry. Like, why? What? Why is this happening? Why are you sharing out? Yeah. Why didn't my sister just flat out text or call me and say, blah, blah, blah? Why did you tell mom? Because, you knew by telling mom that you would have mom's attention and that mom would probably, who knows? So what I learned in this instance is, okay, that's probably going to happen again. Maybe with them, maybe from others. I have the ability to remove myself emotionally. I no longer need to go there. It serves no one.
Yeah.
That was my takeaway. It serves no one to be in that energy that there's no solution being offered. They're just digging themselves into old, well-worn gunk. There's nothing to be had from that. I think that was one of my takeaways with our extended family visit is, what am I meant to learn and diffuse? So
that's great. One of the things that you mentioned just brings up an idea for me that in some of the men's work that I did, one of the, and in terms of learning about empowered and compassionate communication, one of the things that I remember learning is don't talk about somebody, talk to somebody. It's something that's easy to remember, and it really means if you have something that's really important to say about Nancy, go and talk to Nancy about it. That's really what it is, you know? And so the corollary of that statement is don't ever say anything about someone that you would not or have not already said to that person. It's very, very important. And I mean, and I don't mean you should just go and start, dumping your crap all over somebody. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point is, if I have something to say to you, Nancy, or to anybody else for that matter, I've shared here a couple of times that one of the best ways I know to do that is by offering feedback. And just simply say something like, Nancy, I have some feedback for you that I'd like to share. Are you willing to hear it? And then if you say yes, then I am now invited to speak my feedback. But now I have to remember to speak from a place of I statements, self-responsibility, and taking ownership for my own stuff. It's not about me having a free rein to blame you or point fingers at you for something that you did. It is an opportunity for me to share with you what's going on for me as a result of maybe some interaction that took place between us. That's the nature of feedback, right? And if we could all learn to do that, I think this world would be a much, much better place. I mean, I could come to you and I could say, Nancy, I have some feedback for you. Are you open to hearing it? If you say yes, then I could say something like, well, Mom told me that you went and spoke to her about such and such. And when I heard that, I had a real pain in my heart. I thought, why can't Nancy come and talk to me directly? I was having this concern come up. I would much rather have a conversation with you directly than hear about it secondhand from somebody else. Now, when I tell you that, if I say that to you, now you're hearing something about how that impacted me. And I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, when this happened, this is how I reacted. This is what was going on for me. Do you see the difference? And the only reason I'm sharing this with you is because I do want attention, a connection with you. I do want to have that loving brother-sister or sister-sister relationship with you. But when stuff like this happens, it makes me feel, it doesn't make me feel, I have a reaction that leads me to feel unsafe or something along that line. So if we could learn to communicate in that way and just share what's going on for us from our heart, not from some story that's going on in the ego mind, but down here from the heart, we can go a long way towards healing these broken relationships.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah. So instead of saying you made me, I felt, hurt, unheard, angry, painful when this interaction between us took place. So you're not saying you made me feel angry, which immediately the other person's going to be defensive. Oh, what? But I felt hurt by our interaction when I heard these words. Yeah, that is definitely a learned tool that we're not given a communications book upon birth or under adulthood. I wish.
Yeah, that's right.
So
well, I think that's part of our journey, isn't it? Is to learn how to do these things, is to learn the skills. We come in here into this planet open, loving, joyful, vulnerable.
Mhm.
And shortly after getting here, we start getting little barbs and little pains, and we start becoming defensive, and we start getting conditioned. All those things start happening. And so part of our process of growing up and maturing is to learn how to deal with those things in a more mature and compassionate and healthy way.
Yes. That's the learning journey that begins always with each of us beginning to be aware and notice if we're repeating these same cyclical patterns, like press play and repeat, and getting nowhere with them, and then wondering why we always feel unheard or defensive or angry. I think that was our journey, that we always were almost hitting a wall. We kept doing the same things or feeling, well, after a while, okay, do I want to continue to have this, or is there another way, a more full way for balance? And I'm reading your comment, Denise. How do you deal with those who will not react well to that approach and just get defensive? Here's one thought I have is, you do not need to be responsible for the other person's reaction. You can't.
Absolutely.
Because it's theirs, and that it's their energy, maybe their trauma, their hurt, their maybe unconscious life pattern. You're only responsible for how you're delivering your comment. And as David shared, rather than saying, if something comes up that's just out of nowhere, rather than saying, gee, why did you say that? Well, that's going to make them defensive, or I'm tired of this, or just say, again, nobody really can do a whole lot when you say, wow, I feel really uncomfortable or hurt or sad or misunderstood. Okay, maybe they'll blow up and go bonkers, but you're only sharing your feelings, how you feel, without saying you made me feel misunderstood, uncomfortable, angry. And that's the learning part, is how to separate their garbage, junk stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where it hurts. That's that gray line. If they react a certain way, that flows to every conversation and just puts bad energy. Okay, so that's toxic energy. Yep. That energy that you're calling the bad energy, that is toxic energy. And unfortunately, we have the choice. If we find ourselves gathered in another person's toxic energy, we have the choice to sit with it or remove ourselves. I now know I cannot be around people with toxic energy. I really, it comes at me in waves. Something happened on our extended trip with my husband, who put out a lot of toxic energy. And because we're so comfortable, I said, look, I'm going to leave because you are really damaging me right now. You're not able to use reason and logic because you're living in the pain of the past. You have the choice to get help. I've got to leave. So you can just leave and excuse yourself. It's not easy. It may feel awkward and uncomfortable, but nobody ever said it's our business to sit inside somebody's toxic energy. No one.
Well, and you see, I want to chime in on this because your version of toxic energy may be different than somebody else's. So you have to be very, very careful. And so there's something else going on here that I think is very important. If I have an interaction, let's say I do offer some feedback to somebody and that person reacts defensively. Well, there's two parts to this. I may have actually said something that was a kind of an attacking comment and put that person on defensive. I may have said it unconsciously without being aware of it. If that's true, then it really is helpful to me to say, okay, I see that you're feeling defensive. I understand that. Can you tell me what I said that led you to be defensive? And what was it? The words that I used, or was it body language? Was it something else? Find out, because I may indeed be getting very aggressive when I speak. I tend to speak loudly anyway, and I have a lot of energy, as you know. So sometimes people can be intimidated by that. Now, I know that's not me. I'm not the one intimidating them. I know that they are intimidated, you see? And there's a difference. Now, on the other hand, if I can get overly aggressive, then I may be contributing. So how do I rein it in?
Mm-hmm.
So when someone else tells me they're feeling defensive, yes, it's their reaction. And yes, I may have contributed to it. So let's look for the common ground. And maybe if I can take ownership of a part of it, that will reduce their defensiveness and make them more open to my comments or whatever. The other thing I wanted to say is we in our Western culture have a general, I judge, a bad habit of pretending to feel something when we're really thinking something. We use the I feel statement very, very loosely and without really talking about feelings at all. For example, when I say, what's that?
So very good. Yes. Continue.
Yeah. So just to give an example, I remember when I was married to my wife, up until 2006. We're getting some feedback here. Is that me or what?
Sorry, no. I on my laptop I have a text box and I don't know how to close it.
Okay. So anyway, she once said something to me. I feel abandoned, or I feel neglected, and I remember at the time something about those phrases really bugged me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. It took me a long time to figure this out. But if you think about it for a minute, neither abandoned nor neglected are feelings. What she was saying to me was, in her own languaging, she was saying, you abandoned me or you neglected me. And my real feelings are sadness or fear or anger. But the way I encapsulate all that is to say, I feel abandoned. So anytime you use I feel followed by the past participle of a verb, you're actually expressing a thought or a judgment and not a feeling at all. There certainly may be some emotion associated with it. That is true, but you're not really sharing the emotion. So let me just give you an example of how you might translate that. So the thought comes to my head with you, Nancy, and I'm thinking, my God, I'm feeling neglected right now. Mm-hmm. That's the thought that comes to my head. So I can say to you, Nancy, I have something I'd like to share with you. Are you willing to hear it? And you say yes. I said, okay. When you did X, Y, and Z, I had this reaction in my head that created a story that I was being neglected. I was being neglected. I was being abandoned. That's a story I made up. It's probably related to, back when I was 5 years old, my mom left me at school or whatever. She was supposed to pick me up. She never got me. Whatever the story is. That fear, the feeling that comes up with that is fear. I was really scared when that happened. And I know you didn't deliberately neglect me. I'm just telling you what happened. Okay? Now you can see that I'm just telling you about my reaction. You see? And I'm now owning all of it for myself and saying, thank you for hearing me. That's all I wanted to say. I feel better now. You don't have to say a word. Although it would be nice if you said, well, thank you for sharing that with me. Now I can understand some of the stuff that I see going on,
That's a powerful tool to use personally for me to personally use, or if somebody, a family member we feel like they're offloading or whatever, just simply listen, not get in the mix of it, get into our story and just thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, right. Another thing that you might say, if when people approach me with that kind of feedback, I say, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Do you want a response?
Mm-hmm.
And, because maybe there's a part of you, but I recommend that you don't just jump into a response unless that's what they want. They might say, no, I just wanted to get that off my chest, and they go off on their merry way. Now, if you're really feeling triggered as a result of that feedback, guess what? You could go back and offer some feedback to that same person later on. You know, you don't have to get into it right now.
Yeah, and that's interesting because in our society, I believe, again, maybe the American culture, we're conditioned to dish it out. If the stay on your ground or stake your claim, that
Right.
when we're in a conversation that might start going sideways without these tools, both parties begin to get defensive, and that's when the words fly. The energy is, again, draining or negative or toxic. And in that place, it just creates more and more feelings that might get stuffed that are going to not go anywhere, are going to be underneath the surface. And then if you happen to meet up with those people or family again, they're going to be right underneath the surface, like waiting for the shoe to fall, so to speak. So
Right.
it does take, that is an excellent tool, the feedback. I have something I would like to share with you. Can I share that? Go ahead, and you give them the feedback.
And try to own it all as your own, because this
Yeah.
is a very, very important thing for people to understand.
Your story.
When I give you feedback, that feedback is 100% about me. It's not about you at all. And that is true even if, let's say, I'm your boss and I'm giving you feedback about your work. That feedback is all about me. It has nothing to do with you. It's my judgments about you. It's my stories about you. And sure, there might be some factual metrics that I can look at. You know, I can say this actually happened, this actually happened, this actually happened. You were responsible for each of those things, or you had declared responsibility for them. But you see, it's still my feedback. That's a really important thing for people to understand. People don't, people say, oh, I'm just offering her feedback so she can improve.
Yeah.
Well, you're already making the assumption that she's not good enough if you think that that's what, that she needs to improve.
Mm-hmm.
You see? And that's the whole thing. I mean, people have to understand that where they're coming from. Whenever I communicate anything to anybody, that communication is about me. Always. And the moment we all understand that and take ownership of it, that's when we begin to reduce the amount of crap we start giving people.
So in other words, what I'm hearing is, if I you and I are going to have a conversation and I'm giving you, quote, feedback that's both objective and subjective on an area that I feel important about, what's really coming out of me under the guise of me helping you is my own bias and my own story of what I perceive.
Exactly. Sure. And that's not to say it isn't valuable to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm saying. I am just saying that whoever offers the feedback, that feedback is about the person giving it, not the person receiving it. That's my point. Do either of you provide 24/7 hand-holding therapy support?
Sure.
Not 24/7. No, sorry. I will gladly support you in, if you want to have sessions to help you deal with your own situation. Yeah, we can do that. And I'm sure Nancy would be happy to do the same thing. But really, the reason we do these conversations is precisely so that people like you, Denise, can learn about, some tools that can be useful to you in your own life.
As we learn them ourselves and are constantly, again, once you learn the tools, it's not a one and done. You're constantly relearning and reworking them to fit where you're at. And like today, I knew it, but I learned it more, that I have to understand in a good way that when I'm, quote, sharing feedback with somebody, or okay, here's a good one. So in my family, they love to advise. My side loves to over advise like nobody's business. And that can either be really helpful or it can be really off-putting. So I am learning to posture myself. I can either A, share feedback. Hey, I feel unheard, or I don't know, that would be my story. What would be good? So if I don't want to have a lot of advice, what would I say? I feel sad when you're giving me that much advice because I feel I'm not understood. I don't know. So yeah, I have to counter that.
Well, yeah. Well, one way you could do it is you could say, I do really appreciate your perspective. And I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. There's a lot. Now, notice I use that word overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. That's a past participle of a verb. So what I'm really saying is you are overwhelming me right now. So now I need to rethink my language.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't catch that immediately. But you see how easy it is. We've gotten so used to using those past participles as a way of describing feelings because we're inculcated with it all throughout our culture. Mm-hmm. And so we don't even realize we're actually judging the other person when we say those things, So what I might say is, I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much for all you offer. I know that, maybe I don't always take your advice and implement it immediately. But that's the nature of feedback. I look at feedback and I say, what really resonates for me? What part can I definitely own as my own? And what part can I just simply say, okay, thank you very much. That part doesn't really work for me. You see, this is part of the nature of feedback. And if we could come to an agreement that any feedback I offer you, you are free to accept or reject in its entirety or any part of it. You see, but don't just simply reject it out of hand. Simply say, thank you so much for this feedback. I will think about it. And then just let it go.
Yes. And with that comes the understanding that who I am, I have my own story that plays within me based on what I experienced, how I took it in, as do you. And again, my story is my own. It's not something that I can toss or apply onto another. And that to be aware that, okay, this is a good one. So when people are sharing with you, Denise, or you're having a conversation, if you begin to understand that they're sharing, they think they're giving, bringing something up to the surface, but really what they're doing is sharing their own story that's theirs. And how you hear their story is yours.
Yeah, bingo.
They're sharing their own story that has nothing to do with you, maybe some. Your filtering in of that story is yours.
That's very good. I like the way you put that. Yeah, that's nice. A way of putting it is, I have a story in which you and I were interacting in some way. So you are a part of my story, but my story has already been filtered by my own perceptions and my own biases and so forth. So I may remember some aspect of that story that is completely different from your memory of it. And that's the way we are. Sorry to say, it's probably not going to change anytime soon because that's the nature of humanity. We all have our own individual biases.
Of course.
So if we can just recognize that, here's my recollection. I remember such and such and such and such. You could say, well, that's not how I remember it. You can say, I remember this and this and this and this. And there might be some commonalities and there might be some big differences, right? But I think that when I say, or let's say when you say, I remember X, Y, and Z happening, and I say, no, it didn't happen like that. Now I'm making you wrong, rather than simply saying, no, my recollection is different. You see? So if we can both say, yep, we have two recollections, there's some overlap and there's some differences. It's like two Venn diagrams, those circular things that kind of overlap. There might be a lot of overlap. Whoops, I can't do the circles very good with my hands, but you know the idea. You can have a lot of overlap, or you can have a small amount of overlap, or they may not overlap at all.
Yeah. Now I'm really thinking about the whole story essence, because that is the essence of, I guess, yeah, the extended family visit. It's full of stories.
That's right. That's right. And look at, we're laughing at it now. Wouldn't it be nice if we could laugh while it's happening?
Yes, that would be. But being human, we get caught up in the energy of the moment.
That's right.
Of stories. So there's multiple stories that come into play that know that. So I guess, okay, so a good takeaway with extended family visits is that everyone has their own story based on how they've experienced things, their personality, their ancestral, development. And my job, I can't get into their story. I can't even begin to fathom the deep movement of that. But if I know that everyone, including myself, has our own persona and story, then maybe I can be better able to balance it and say, oh yeah, my sister-in-law is sharing about how she felt, mom and dad had a really out of a wacky relationship and she's pissed off. Okay. But then the other sister said, oh, they had the most loving relationship. I'm like, that's like, so, they each have their own.
Did you see the same relationship I did?
Yeah. So, okay. Oh, well, I don't need to jump into that. That's their story. It's her story and hers. I have my own. How can I regulate my own emotional capacity, really, so I have good energy to stay in here and not want to flee? How can I?
Okay, that's a good point. And also, if you find it necessary to leave, I think the first thing that it would be wise to do is to check in and say, okay, why am I wanting to leave?
Mm-hmm.
Is this because I just don't feel I can handle it? Is it because it's bringing up all kinds of old stuff for me and I'm afraid of how I'm going to react? What's really going on here? Or is it really just a toxic environment and I just don't want to be here anymore? There's all kinds of possibilities here. So there's nothing wrong with leaving, but I think you owe yourself a favor, and that is to do a little bit of introspection before you actually walk out that door. Just to look and be honest with yourself and say, why am I choosing to leave? What is it that am I running away from something? Am I running towards something? What am I doing here? Am I just setting a boundary? So this is something that we all should be doing all the time, I think, in every situation we're in. Is this the right situation for me? Is this the best use of my time and my energy? Those are kinds of questions that we can all be asking ourselves no matter what we're doing, right? Yeah. And whether it's a family situation or whether it's some other kind of situation.
Yeah, and what you just shared, Denise, about Christmas, that is an emotionally charged holiday with really awesome things and potentially really toxic things. And what can you do if it's your favorite holiday to move that good energy in you to counter what other people's stories that may be in your life during that holiday? What can you do to preserve or maintain or open your enjoyment of Christmas that may counter other people, family or friends that come in that, yeah, you drink a lot. Well, there you go. So, but that was a learning lesson for me. We had a troubled, one of our sons was deeply troubled, and my recent memories of the holidays have taken a more heavier energy twist to them. So I'm doing work now that I don't carry my story Yeah, you're it's okay, Denise. I don't carry my story into that holiday and assume that everyone else felt the same way, or so maybe you have to do some pre-planning to counter what may or may not be occurring. Maybe a drink does help. That's totally fine. Or, there's some good work that we can do going into, especially these events that come up, to maintain to work with other people's stories and maintain what it is you want to receive. As David said, that is the work of Stories and Shadows is extremely fascinating and has a great undercurrent to it as well.
Yeah, I think if we can be aware of the fact up front, stories are going to happen. The people in your family are going to recount things that may or may not be the same as what you remember. And the question that you can ask yourself is, can I simply hear what they have to say and not react to it? Can I simply say, oh, yeah, I remember that story. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for reminding me, and just leave it at that. You don't have to, correct any factual errors or point out that such and such didn't actually happen, or this or that or the other thing. That's just your own ego mind wanting to be right. And the ego mind always wants to be right. The ego mind wants to be in control, it wants to be in charge, and it needs to be right. If you recognize that, and you can just tame your ego mind before you get into the environment, then you can just kind of come in a grounded place and let your heart be as open as possible, and then just show up, and see what happens. Come in from a place of curiosity. Curiosity is a great tool. I wonder what amazing thing is going to happen today. What wonderful new experience am I going to have? And try to think of it in a positive way, not, oh my God, what dreadful thing is going to happen to me this time?
And it helps also to know ahead of time if you're dealing with a family member or friend that always seems to have the same posture, the same story. Okay, so I kind of am anticipating this person or that gearing toward the same well-worn topic or turning things back around to the whatever. If I anticipate that ahead of time before I go into it, I can work my energy so that I am not feeling heavily impacted by that. I can just smile and hear their story about whatever, take a drink as needed, share something, or just thank you for sharing without needing to jump into or be covered up by their story. That was kind of what I began to work into toward the latter part of our trip. We had a very huge event, lots of energy and stories. And I did know at that point I had to preserve my energy so that I could enjoy what I wanted to enjoy and not feel really wore out or tired. So I made that decision to just let those stories fly up over and around me and not hold those, not get into that. It was too much for me. So pre-planning can go a long way in preparing for a family visit. If you now know ahead of time, oh, we're all about our stories, and what we hear comes from our story. So yeah,
that's really quite true. I think we did an episode on, or maybe it was on Life Mastery TV, but I've talked about story a lot in different situations and stuff like that. Remember, you have a story. You are not your story, and neither is anybody else. This is a very, very important thing to remember. And if you can keep that in mind, then you may be able to kind of step more fully into possibilities, because if you recognize that you have a story, then you can also recognize that there are plenty of unwritten pages, and you have all kinds of new chapters to write in your story. So the story is constantly expanding and growing and becoming more inclusive of the events in your life. And the other thing that can happen with a story is if you believe you are the story, then you won't allow it to change. But the truth of the matter is, you may have forgotten certain events in your past. You may have forgotten about something that really had a strong impact in your life. And you can, if you are open to the fact that you have a story rather than being the story, then you are more open to the possibility of remembering something that you might have forgotten and reinserting that somewhere within your storyline in the past. That's the power that you have when you think about story. And we all have that power.
Yeah. To know that again, to reiterate that, we each have a story. I have a story, totally have a story. I have a storyline written. And however, I'm not my story, right? But maybe self-consciously or unconsciously, I do things throughout my day to make my story come alive, whatever storyline I've told myself. It's interesting. And that's when we start using the mindfulness key to pause. Oh, where did this come from? Maybe, is it possible that when we make our story, quote, come alive, can that be considered some self-sabotage? Maybe.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by making your story come alive.
Well, let's just say we told ourselves, like one of the stories I used to always use was, I am not tech savvy. I don't have the ability to pick up and learn new things. And so sure enough, if I was going online to try to figure something out, of course I couldn't figure it out because my story was, I can't figure this out. So it immediately put the lens on that I can't figure it out. And guess what? I couldn't figure it out. So I made
right. Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean then. Yeah.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah. So that's what you mean by making your story come alive.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Or people, for instance, I do a lot of mind body classes. Oh, I'm just inflexible. I can't do it. Da, da, da. Okay. That's their story. And maybe they'll go to one class just to prove their story right. See, I'm inflexible. I'm not coming to this class again.
That's right.
Yeah. Or their story is, I'm going to take this class to increase my flexibility, even though I'm not flexible, you know. So there's different posturing of how we can utilize our story to either sabotage our ability to do things or to say, hey, I got this part of me here, but I'm over here now, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're absolutely right. How the story that we create in any given moment and the story that we bring to life in that moment tends to shape how our future situations occur. You've got something ringing again.
I'm going to fix that when we end our program today. So
right.
The technological story.
All right. And I mean, I think about this. One little story that I create for myself is, I guess I thought, well, I'm trying to think of how I phrased this when I was younger. First of all, I used to believe that I was not good enough. Right? Mm-hmm. If any negative belief I had always came back to that idea of not being good enough. And it's a very, very disempowering, limiting belief. Because if you believe you're not good enough, then it's true for you in that moment. Because as long as you believe you're not good enough, you won't be good enough, period. But the moment you can understand that you have just as much power and capability as anybody else, anywhere on this planet, in fact, all over the universe, then you can begin to realize you have almost unlimited creative capability. And, you know, I think there are two times in my life that I can think of before I really started doing my personal growth work where I embraced that idea. And the first was becoming a fighter pilot, where I simply wanted it bad enough that I wasn't going to let any notion of not being good enough stop me from doing it. All right. And you've read my story. You've heard my story about this. I actually went through, a long process to become a fighter pilot. And every step of the way, it was just, what do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? That was really what it was about. Well, the second time in my life, the same sort of thing happened when I wanted to go back to university. I thought, She says, I don't know if I'm smart enough to go back to university. Well, immediately, as soon as I say that, I'm not smart enough to go back to university, I started shutting myself down. But when I realized I was doing that, I said, maybe I am smart enough to go back to university. So I said, what do I have to do to complete this program? And they told me every step of the way, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'll tell you, once I started applying myself and going back to university, I was getting, 95+% on virtually every course I took because I knew that I could do it. I believed that I could do it. It's not because I'm smarter than anybody else. It's just that I wanted it probably more than other people did. And so I ended up with a master's degree and I had like top marks, summa cum laude kind of marks. And I was invited into a PhD program, which I started a PhD in computer science. And then partway through that, I ended up quitting because I got divorced and all the rest of that. I mean, but you get my point. If you believe you can do it, then you can do it, period. It's just that simple. And if you believe you can't do it, then guess what? You can't do it.
That's pretty powerful.
I think we got a little off topic there, but
I'm like, extended family. Well, I guess we can. Okay, so reading Denise's comment, it takes a lot of work and positive mental attitude. Well, that's the segue. If you desire to do that work and work on a positive mental attitude, you will. So what is your story around it takes a lot of work and a positive mental attitude? I don't know your story, but you do. So maybe your takeaway, Denise, with your last comment would be, what is my story around? What am I making it mean? And use that as a starting point. You've got a couple years. You're great.
Oh, Denise, you got a sense of humor. I like that.
Yes. So it takes one little step. It's not a one and done. It's not gonna, as we began, as David and I both began our work, we continue to grow and learn. And today's conversation was no different. It really was an eye opener for me that what I shared, again, we're intuitive here as well, and we feed, but it was like, everyone who is having a conversation with me or you is coming at us, even if it's with the best intention to guide us, help us, one-up us, is sharing from their story, and what I hear from them is my story.
Bingo. That's a great learning tool right there. Yeah. If we could just somehow encapsulate that in a little bumper sticker, that would be pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good show today. Very good show.
Yes. Thank you again, Nancy. It's always a pleasure to be having these conversations with you. I think we cover a lot of great ground. We share a lot of good material, and today is no different.
Yep, no different. So Denise, hopefully you'll join us. We do our soul empowerment once a month on the second Tuesday at 1. You can listen live as you have today, or you can go back and listen to that recording. So we're always here. Yeah.
Hey, Denise, you say someone needs to create a mirror, so when you look into it, it says positive things back to you. You're the one who thought of it. Why don't you create that mirror?
There you go.
You have the sense of humor, and then you come out with this really brilliant idea. Hey, create it yourself and sell it. You could call it something like the better image or something. I don't know. You'll come up with something. You're a smart lady, I'm sure.
Well, Denise, join us. Join us next month. Yeah, 10,000. That's your story. That's coming your way. I've got some other things I need to attend to today, but as always, this show has been a really good one. I hope that you got a lot of takeaways. I know I always learn, and I feel empowered when we complete our shows.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for joining us. Remember, this show and recordings of every other show we've done are on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. You can just check out. There's a link at the top of the page for blog, and you'll find soul empowerment episodes there. Check them out. Come join the party. Leave comments. Write and share this with other people, because that really helps us to spread the word.
Exactly.
All right.
So much.
Thank you, everybody. We'll say bye-bye for now.
Bye. Take care.